Going to get started. And thank you everyone for being here and for this is going to be really interesting and exciting conversation. I want to, before I turn everything over to our speakers, I just want to tell you that we're going to be using the chat feature for asking questions. So if you have a question, feel free to put it in the chat, and we're going to try to get to as many different topics as we possibly can. So feel free to start putting them in there now if you've got, or as you hear it. And we just ask that you keep the chat on topic about transportation and infrastructure. So with that, I'd like to introduce our first speaker, Mayor Shelley Brindle, who, after 25 years working in media and becoming the first female executive in HBO's C-suite, where she became known as a driving force for bold ideas, Shelley Brindle knew that values-based leadership transcends industries and sectors. She chose to take her private sector leadership approach and apply it to municipal government to better deliver for residents and businesses. In 2017, she unseated a 3-term incumbent to become the first female mayor of Westfield and was overwhelmingly reelected in 2021. In 2022, Mayor Brindle was named Mayor of the Year by the Gateway Regional Chamber of Commerce and sits on the executive board of the League of Municipalities. As mayor, she co-founded the Raritan Valley Line Mayors Alliance to advocate for improved service for 23,000 commuters. As a mayor of a suburban train town, Mayor Brindle is uniquely positioned to understand that Mayor Fulop's plan to make New Jersey a national leader in public transportation will bring jobs, investment, and improve overall quality of life for everyone. And I am proud to welcome my mayor, Mayor Shelley Brindle. You're muted, Shell.
Thank you. It wouldn't be a Zoom call without that, right? Thank you, Lisa, for the introduction. It's always thrilled to have one of my own constituents make those introductions, so it's particularly great. And I'm particularly thrilled to be here to discuss something that I'm particularly passionate about, and that is public transportation. I want to thank Mayor Fulop for inviting me to speak, as he knows how passionate I am about this. So I am, as Lisa said, the co-founder and co-chair of the Raritan Valley Line Mayors Alliance. It's comprised of a bipartisan group, excuse me, of 32 mayors from Union, Somerset, Hunterdon, and Middlesex counties. And we represent and advocate for 23,000 Raritan Valley Line users. And many of you may or may not know, but we are the largest line in the state of New Jersey that does not have direct seat peak service into Manhattan. We have to commute, change in Newark, and I'll talk a little bit about how grueling and that can be. But we believe that our Raritan Valley Line users, like everybody, deserve safe, regular, and reliable direct service into New York. And we believe that it will improve the quality of life for our commuters, the economic prospects for our communities, and the overall property values for our residents. I was passionate about this after I was elected in 2017. Co-founding this alliance was one of the very first things I did. As a former 20-year commuter into the city, I knew firsthand how the stress of an unreliable commute impacts families. I often like to say, as a mom, was commuting of 3 kids and obviously raised them all while I was working in the city, I was never the mom I wanted to be when I walked into the door at night. And with a connection in Newark that got increasingly more challenging and unreliable, the largest stress, I think, of any transportation is the unreliability and uncertainty of when you might get where you're supposed to be. But as I became mayor, I also realized that the lack of reliable and accessible public transportation impacts New Jersey residents and families statewide, not just New York City commuters. And what I really appreciated about when I first spoke to Mayor Fulop, and certainly, luckily had some input into the transportation plan that we'll be discussing this evening, I knew that he had seen firsthand how an accessible and efficient transportation network can improve the quality of life for all residents. So I'm speaking tonight because the opportunity is not just limited to urban centers, but improved transportation policy and funding will benefit rural and suburban communities just as much. And I believe that New Jersey as the most densely populated state in the country, is in the unique position to benefit the most from a broad investment in transportation infrastructure to support trains, cars, bikes, and pedestrians. And I always like to think who could benefit from this. It's not just a suburban working parent like myself seeking a reliable New York City commute to make it home for dinner with the kids. It's a senior citizen that's yearning to age in place, a small business owner that's trying to attract regional workers, a parent who wants the assurance that their kids can safely walk to school, an aspiring biker who's reluctant to ride on congested roads, or very importantly, a corporation considering relocating to New Jersey for its access to talent and resources. And so investing in transportation infrastructure has far-reaching statewide benefits. I firmly believe, and I think Mayor Fulop has expressed this, intrastate transportation is as important as interstate transportation. And we need, and I've seen it here in Westfield, the opportunity to attract talent from the city, but also from around the state to support our businesses that have recently opened and we're hoping to attract here. We need to attract investment, which will create more jobs. Public transportation, reliable, affordable public transportation will create equitable access to jobs. It expands affordable housing opportunities and it reduces carbon emissions, which is, I know, important to all of us. And I read a stat one time, I think for the Department of Transportation, which I found remarkable, that 30% of New Jersey residents live within walking distance from a train station. And that we should be leaning into that and leveraging that to be one of our biggest assets to do all the things that I just mentioned. And in towns like ours, addressing what I call the last mile problem, which I think Mayor Fulop has done successfully in Jersey City with many microtransit options. It could be a boon for suburban communities along the train line, allowing us to get cars off the roads and transform our vast parking lots into space that can provide broader public benefit. So I'm thrilled to be here to support and discuss in detail this transportation plan that Mayor Fulop will be speaking out tonight. And I look forward to providing a suburban mayor's perspective on why it's important to all of us. So with that, I'm going to hand it back over to you, Lisa.
Great. Thank you so much, Mayor. And next up, we're very honored to be joined by Ray Greaves. Ray is the International Vice President of the largest transportation union in the country with over 220,000 members, Amalgamated Transit Union. Prior to that, he served as ATU NJ's state business agent from 2011 to 2019. Representing approximately 7,500 members employed by New Jersey Transit, including bus and light rail operators, mechanics, clerical and salaried employees. He is also a former councilman in the city of Bayonne. And welcome, Mr. Greaves.
Thank you, Lisa. It's an honor to be here today. I'll tell you, I'm used to, introducing Steve from a picnic bench at the beer garden down in Jersey City. So this is a little different for me tonight, but such an honor to be here for such a great individual who is going to be our next governor of New Jersey, and I know we're all looking forward to that. Just want to talk about Steve a little bit. I've known Steven since 2009. When I was running for city council, I got to meet Steve, and I always admired him. And I want to say I really admire him for his being a family man, just a person he is, a devoted husband, devoted father. He's just a really, really good human being, and I'm proud to call him a friend. What I saw in Steve in 2009, I see even more in him today. He's somebody that knows how to think, right? He's somebody that knows how to lead, as we've all seen his leadership skills in Jersey City. But most importantly, what I found in Steve was that he has this unique ability to listen. And if you're going to be a leader, you have to listen. And Stephen is a great listener, and that's why he's so knowledgeable, and that's why he's able to put together a policy and plan that is going to make New Jersey Transit the best transit agency in the history of this country. But he's really going to make transit accessible for everybody in this great state. And I really believe in that. I believe in him. He really understands it and he gets it. So with that, I'm the vice president of the Amalgamated Transit Union. We represent over 220,000 hardworking transit workers. And we have so many other affiliates that I have the honor of working with throughout the transit industry. And so many of those, like myself, believe in Stephen and believe in his leadership and his unique understanding of transit. So without any further ado, I want to introduce the mayor of Jersey City, my friend, a friend of everybody's on this Zoom, and the next governor of the great state of New Jersey, my man, Stephen Fulop. Go ahead, Stephen.
Ray, that is quite an introduction. Let me say thank you. Can you all hear me okay? More or less? All right. So first, I just want to take a second and say thank you to all of you for participating. And I think the fact that we're pushing close to 300 people on this call in the end of summer, August, 2 years out from an election, speaks to the fact that, you know, we're onto something here with regards to transportation and changing New Jersey transit and infrastructure in New Jersey. Before I kind of go through the details of the plan, I just want to tell you kind of how the call is going to work. I'm going to tell you a little bit about why I'm structuring the campaign this early in this way. Go through some high-level bullet points about the platform that I put out there, and then, you know, most importantly, answer questions that you have. And we're not really screening questions. You can put them into the chat. Everybody can see them. And if we don't get to them because of time today, then we will respond to you via email individually. Because, you know, I think Shelley, who's worked on this with me, would say the same thing, that we don't think we have all the answers. We think we're on the path to having a right path forward, but we don't have all the answers, and we know that. And having conversations like this is really important to figuring out what we can do better. And so that's part of the conversation today. For me, I started the campaign 5 months ago, and, you know, people said that it was too early. I would never be able to keep momentum. I'd alienate people. But, you know, when I ran for mayor in Jersey City in 2013, it's important to recognize I ran against the political grain. We didn't have a lot of support. We were very detailed on the policies that we would do in Jersey City to change it. And we want to replicate that. In order to do that statewide, to be able to be a viable candidate with or without the political infrastructure, it takes time, it takes organization, and you got to be detailed on policy initiatives. So from my standpoint, you know, the worst case scenario out of this is we set a roadmap and have a good conversation. And the best case scenario out of this is that we raise the bar with a more detailed plan than anybody's ever put forward. And the expectation from residents is that other people, when they say, I'm going to run for governor or run for any office, that the expectation is that they will do the same with solutions and not just platitudes. And so we put this forward, and I have a tremendous number of partners. If you've paid attention to the race over the last couple of months, you see that a lot of mayors have come on board, and some of the best mayors in the state of New Jersey. I know some of you may be meeting or seeing Mayor Brindle for the first time here, but you know, she is a force of nature. I mean, she really is one of the best mayors in the state of New Jersey. She does it and organizes by herself. She's always on the side of doing what is right. And, you know, from a policy standpoint, I think she's thorough, and she shows leadership when the tides aren't easy. She's willing to lean in and try to communicate why things are needed and try to bring people in her direction. And that goes to what we're trying to do here. You know, since we put this forward a week ago, I can't tell you how many people have reached out and told me that it was a political mistake, or I'd alienate XYZ person or XYZ organization. And I understand that, but I'm trying to really run a campaign and ultimately be an administration that is consequential and meaningful and impactful and changing New Jersey for the better. And if you're going to do that, then you need to be transparent with what you believe, treat people like adults so that they could understand it. And hopefully, like I said about Mayor Brindle, articulate that and bring people along to where you're coming from. And so that's why we started with this. And the plan is that every month we're going to do a different sort of initiative. that outlines a major policy point for New Jersey. I believe next month is either housing or public safety, followed by the other one. Education is part of it, sustainability, government reform, and each will be as detailed as this. Now, I don't expect everybody to agree with everything that's here, but hopefully you appreciate the fact that we're being thoughtful about how to be an effective candidate and ultimately effective governor in moving New Jersey forward. Before we go through kind of these slides on a high level and talk through some of the policy points, I do want to say that it was also important to me that most of what you see here is not done via think tanks or quote unquote people that historically have just navigated the policy conversation, because I wanted to lean in on mayors, because mayors have a unique perspective. And I think I have a unique perspective for the reason that I've been doing this for 10 years in Jersey City, which is the most ethnically diverse city in the entire country and a complicated city with a lot of different challenges. So I thought everything I wanted to do was something that was realistic, something that was attainable that I could accomplish based on my experience, and then let you, the voter or the resident, decide. So with that, we're going to go through a couple slides, and then we're going to open up to questions. And I'll do my best to explain the high-level points of kind of the things I touched in the plan, and then we'll open up to conversation, and we should be done close to 8 o'clock, and we'll follow up with the people that we don't get to tonight. So Lisa, you want to go to some of these slides? That'll be terrific. Okay, so that's kind of the introduction. I think you're all familiar with that. This is just focused on transportation. It's not only New Jersey Transit. I try to touch on buses, light rail, Port Authority, path system, and even some of the things that we've done in Jersey City that done very well, like Vision Zero, bike infrastructure, ferry infrastructure, things we've dealt with in Jersey City. And we've tried to encompass some of those things here and then get input from some of the other mayors around New Jersey on what types of things we could be doing better. So with that, we'll start. If you want to go to the next slide. This is statewide investment in smart transportation infrastructure will be the top priority. I think Mayor Brindle did the best job in outlining why we're leading with transportation. I really think that it impacts so many of the other conversations. You talk about quality of life, you talk about segregation, you talk about housing opportunities. At the core of that is a conversation around transportation and access and how do we invest in infrastructure. And so having that as the lead conversation and the lead white paper for the campaign was deliberate. And I want you to understand that it is a core priority for what we're trying to do in 2025 and beyond. Next slide, please. So this is a little bit about, what I touched on earlier with regards to some experience in Jersey City on specific issues around transportation. The state hasn't really invested to the extent that I believe that they should on support for transportation infrastructure in different municipalities. So we've been tasked with trying to figure out a lot of this stuff on our own. Last or 2 years ago, we started a microtransit system using technology with a partnership with VIA to connect transit deserts to some of the major transportation infrastructures like the light rail and the path, recognizing that New Jersey Transit wasn't looking to solve that stuff. Since we launched that using technology, it has become the most successful microtransit system in the entire country. We've done more than 1 million rides in 2 years. The infrastructure and the fleet is growing rapidly. And if you think about the opportunity for microtransit, it is something that can be replicated statewide within the New Jersey Transit infrastructure. Just thinking about how buses move around the state, buses tend to be a different type of form of mobility, not always the most sustainable from an environmental standpoint, and not always the most efficient, because sometimes they run from point to point, regardless of whether they're full or not full. And the technology exists today to work with people like Ray in order to make sure that there's flexible, dynamic routing, because that's what we do here in Jersey City with the technology that's there. It's more environmentally conscious because you're not wasting energy on big infrastructure and you're moving people in a very, very rapid way. And it's something that we've learned here in Jersey City and we can replicate. It's part of the plan that we would do in larger cities as a pilot program throughout New Jersey. The bike share program, we started it here in 2014. It's expanded to some of our neighbors here. We have the largest bike share program in New Jersey. We've created a bike master plan with protected bike lanes. And it is something that we've leaned into because we recognize not everybody drives and we want to encourage other modes of transportation. And it's kind of a chicken or egg conversation. You need to build the infrastructure in order to have people to use it. And what we've done is build it, and we're slowly seeing it becoming more adopted. Vision Zero, this is being replicated at the state. We were the first in New Jersey to adopt the Vision Zero plan. We were a national model last year with 0 deaths via crashes on our streets. And it is something that the state is looking to replicate. I don't know if they've passed the bill and where they are in it. I know it's been a conversation. We've been a supporter of that. And again, lessons learned in Jersey City that we can replicate. Ferry service investment. You'd be hard pressed to find another city that kind of lost ferry service and took it upon themselves to go through the RFP process, to own it individually, to figure out the good and the bad of this process. We did that here. This is one place that we partnered with this state in order to move some of our more vulnerable communities at a subsidized rate, as ferry is another option to move them to and from New York. And it's been a success since we started. And then the smart fees to better align transportation goals. You know, people haven't looked at their the parking fees and taxes that were associated with some of the commuter lots here in Jersey City or Newark in decades. You know, we led the initiative at the state to change that, and all of those dollars goes back to infrastructure around transit hubs in order to make it more of a place that people want to use, feel comfortable, clean, comfortable, and accessible. So that's kind of just the background. I do think we've learned a lot, and we have a degree of expertise on transportation infrastructure just from doing this for 10 years as the mayor. Next slide, please. Okay, so, you know, this is kind of broadly speaking, if you think back into the 80s and even the 90s, I mean, New Jersey had a major transit system that was kind of the shining star in many ways from a national model. It makes sense because we are a corridor state. We are a densely populated state. And the sad part is that the infrastructure upgrades and the growth that is needed just hasn't kept pace. There is $1 billion projected gap with regards to New Jersey transit in 2025. Many reporters have, spoke to that, and there is nobody speaking to how to solve that. Governor Murphy will be leaving at that point, and it really entails a responsible new administration to figure out how to deal with this. Any candidate that is not putting forward a comprehensive plan on how they're going to find the $1 billion is just not a real candidate at the end of the day. The truth is that if you don't solve for that $1 billion, you will get into a death spiral with New Jersey Transit of more cuts to services, which leads to less funding, and then more cuts and less funding until the system is essentially dead. We were and are the only candidate considering to run for governor, or a declared candidate that running for governor, that has really outlined a plan for that $1 billion. And what I said was the corporate business tax should be reimposed. It is something that Governor Murphy put in place when he first came in, and he's looking to let it expire this year, which would be a mistake. It's basically $1 billion in revenue, which matches perfectly to the gap that's on New Jersey Transit. And it's a tax that's only paid by the largest corporations in New Jersey. So you're not talking about the mom and pop stores, you're talking about the Amazons that have invested here in New Jersey. Now, to let that fade away, I've said this publicly, I think is just silly, because it's been normalized within the balance sheets of these companies after having it for 4 years. So they've accepted it as a place, cost of doing business in New Jersey, and they should participate in the infrastructure of New Jersey. So first and foremost is a dedicated revenue source to fund New Jersey Transit long-term, so that we can return to being that, beacon of transit. And the CBT is an important part of our plan. So next slide. So this kind of outlines, the dedicated funding. We're going to talk a little bit more about the congestion pricing conversation, I think, on the next slide. changes to the path. People had a lot of questions about that. The Port Authority reform, I just want to get back to kind of the blocking and tackling, focusing on logistics and transportation. It's no stranger to anybody here that the Port Authority has gotten more involved in the real estate business. And I think that's a mistake ultimately. And you could actually refocus them and prioritize them on where they need to be. Urban on-demand microtransit investment, I spoke on that a little bit as far as how we approach that in Jersey City. In the plan, there is funding for a pilot program in the 10 most densely populated urban areas, prioritizing light rail over road expansion. This is a big opportunity here. There's a $10 billion capital plan for an expansion of the turnpike here in Hudson County. I've been vocal that it is a mistake, and those dollars should be reprioritized towards investing in light rail and completing the light rail expansion in Bergen and in Camden County. We have seen here in Jersey City that the light rail leads to not only a better quality of life for people, but tremendous amounts of economic development. And there's an opportunity to do similar to what the governor of Maryland did when he was elected, is rededicate some of the funds from just roads into mass transit. The Raritan Valley Line reassessment, I'm going to defer to Mayor Brindle to speak a little bit more about that if she's on right now, so she could maybe highlight a little bit of kind of what we're trying to achieve there and why. And then I'll kind of continue broadly on the next four, and then we'll get into them in detail.
Thank you, Steve. As I mentioned in my opening remarks, is the Raritan Valley Line is the largest line without direct peak service into New York, nor on the weekends. And a lot of it has to do with the allocation of these dual locomotive trains, because we're electrified. And after Christie killed the ARC tunnel, they had these dual locomotive trains that would enable this one-seat ride into the city, but they were going to be built to accommodate the ARC tunnel. But when that was canceled, these trains were already in production, and they were allocated based upon ridership at the time in 2012. And so unfortunately, we were left out of that conversation, and ridership has changed since then. And there should be a reallocation of those dual locomotives that would enable one-seat ride service for the Raritan Valley Line. But very importantly, COVID has also changed ridership patterns. And I think there needs to be a reassessment across the board of allocation of trains and resources based upon ridership and demands post-COVID. And that is really an assessment that we look forward to looking at. Of course, Gateway is going to help solve a lot of those issues, but we don't want to wait 12 to 15 years to solve the problems for the 23,000 commuters on our line.
Okay, the New Jersey Transit Station modernization. This is something that anybody who has New Jersey Transit train stops close to their home today knows that in many of those places, New Jersey Transit owns a lot of properties or orphan properties that aren't maximized. What we were looking to do, similar to what we want to do here in Jersey City, is New Jersey Transit offload those properties and dedicate that to station modernization. So, a one-time revenue with a one-time expense. So it makes perfect sense. But, from a commuter standpoint, having a safe and inviting environment leads to more ridership, and they need to be investing in modernizing some of these antiquated stations. It's a priority for us. Greenway funding, I think it speaks for itself. It's connectivity between Essex and Hudson up north, and also there's one in Camden down south that I spoke to. Safety is also included. Going back to what I said about New Jersey Transit station modernization, it's the same thing on some of our buses. Investing in safety for the riders and for the drivers is paramount, and investing in more modern, environmentally conscious buses is also very, very important. And then fixing the motor vehicle, I'll speak on that a little bit, but with some basic changes, I do think that you could get to a place of a 30-minute turnaround time, and I'll outline how. And I don't think anybody on this call would say any of that is outlandish. So we'll go to the next slide. Okay, so I want to talk a little about congestion pricing, because this is an area that people had questions on. I think New Jersey's approach today from the governor's standpoint is a mistake, and I've said that publicly. I think filing lawsuits is counterproductive. The lawsuits will ultimately likely end with the federal government saying that the congestion pricing can move forward, and we should be thinking more about how to participate in it. Expanded congestion pricing is important because if you think about who congestion pricing impacts today, really only 3% of the commuters commute by car themselves, driving them to work every day. If you are wealthy enough to drive your car into Midtown Manhattan today and find parking day in and day out, the congestion pricing tax that people talk about today doesn't matter to you. You are essentially talking about a tax on the wealthiest people in the surrounding area here. And those dollars should be going back to mass transit to make it a better commute for the 97% of the people that do use mass transit. Now let me say this, that I do think that when I put out this congestion pricing plan, that New Jersey should engage in it as well. I do think there's access points that would never impact a New Jersey commuter coming in, but would impact a commuter coming into New Jersey. Some of the people that are thinking about running against me said, this is a double tax, or this is a bad idea, because it's easy to poke holes at things or throw stones when you don't have any ideas of your own. But the truth is that it is not a double tax. We outlined clearly how New York exempts plenty of people, and that's the conversation that's happening right now. And New Jersey would have the option the same way of exempting, of controlling the times on when best to tax New York drivers coming into New Jersey. But the reality is that there should be a conversation around a regional transportation system and solutions. Said today on some interviews, the same thing, that the fact that the MTA and New York City has struggles with their transportation system, and New Jersey Transit and New Jersey has the same, and we compete for the same federal dollars in an aggressive way, is counterproductive for everybody, because there really needs to be a regional conversation on how we all benefit. Litigation is not the solution here. Where congestion pricing has been implemented, it has shown to be a benefit for congestion issues, which is something that we all experience here in New Jersey, of course. And secondly, it's good for the environment. And thirdly, I want to bring you back to the fact it's not a tax on New Jersey residents here is what I'm proposing. I'm proposing a tax on New York residents. And by not pushing back, you have to realize what New York is doing here is actually a tax on the wealthiest people in New Jersey that choose to drive their cars every day. So I wanted to clarify that on why we are approaching it in this way. I don't think we should be whining and complaining and going through litigation. I've never done that here as mayor in Jersey City as the first approach. And I don't think that's a responsible thing to be doing statewide. So I've been pretty clear. Some people agree with me, some people don't agree with me, but what you'll get from me is direct response with how we want to move forward and deal with something like this. Next slide. The path system. This is another one. I highlighted this here and took it out of the book that you guys read, or the white paper, because it was another touch point where people asked, well, there's a loss that is associated with the path, or how is that going to happen, or it would impact this employee. Of course, we go back to the conversation with keep the things status quo is how most people would want to approach this from the political standpoint. If you've dealt with the path, then you know that since 9/11, there has been a steady deterioration of services. 9/11 was an excuse to curtail some of the service. Hurricane Sandy was another excuse to curtail some of the service. COVID was another excuse to curtail some of the service. So you see a steady diminishing of path service from the Port Authority. And when the Port Authority looks at path from a New York and New Jersey standpoint, New York always makes the argument that it is a New Jersey asset. It counts against the New Jersey ledger. And this is always a rub back and forth. With no investment, it counts against something that New Jersey would ask when they go back and forth on that. So you're really tasked with kind of being pragmatic here. You could continue down the trajectory that we're on, where you say, let's have a conversation with the Port Authority and hope that one day they choose to view it as the asset that it is, or find a way to gradually phase it into New Jersey infrastructure and treat it like the asset and investment that it needs to be. Now, on the $500 million that it costs to run path as far as a deficit, all transportation systems run at a deficit. That's the starting point for this, but it's an investment in the community, an investment in economic development, and it's important for quality of life ultimately. I'm not proposing that it's a day one shift of 500 million, because I'm sure New York City, New York, and the Port Authority would gradually like to phase it in as well. And it's a broader conversation, but I'm telling you where I'd like to go, because I'd like to see PATH become an asset that New Jersey is investing in. if everybody views it as a New Jersey asset, and I know that we view it as a New Jersey asset, we should be fair and reasonable and treat it as such and invest in it. So it's the reason I outlined it. I don't see the current path with Port Authority being the right path forward, using the word path in two different sentences, but I do think that there's an opportunity to go forward on this. Next slide. I touched a little bit on the Port Authority reform. Generally refocusing on transportation, being more engaged with the leadership in the Port Authority. Your current chairman there from New Jersey has done a very, very good job in recalibrating the conversation there. But ultimately, because of the type of infrastructure they have, where the Port Authority was before, the investment around real estate, there are things that I think the governor needs to be directly involved in. And this is an opportunity for improved communication. Next. No, I touched on the motor vehicles, and again, I tried to really focus things around what is practical and reasonable and achievable. And I think that, the same way New York has implemented congestion pricing, there's no reason that New Jersey can't implement congestion pricing on New York and leverage that. So it's certainly attainable. When I tell you that the path is a orphan asset in many ways from the Port Authority, because they treat it as such, there's a conversation to be had there about how to make it better. So I do think it's a reasonable thing to do. The CBT, again, Governor Murphy implemented it. So there is the ability to get this achieved in 4 years ago. There's no reason why we can't do it again in perpetuity and dedicate it to New Jersey Transit. And then fixing the motor vehicles. I mean, look, if you take a step back, we've all experienced this, or any driver has experienced it. You got to change your entire day because the Port Authority is open during hours of 9 to 5 when most people work. It's not convenient. There's not really the push towards online services. Leadership has been often political people as opposed to people that have retail expertise, because it is an important entity. So what we've talked about here from the plan standpoint is setting a goal of a 30-minute turnaround time when you come in. We've changed the hours in our plan to make it more convenient for residents so they don't have to change their whole day. We talked about the type of leadership that retail focus would be important. The motor vehicles is one of the most important functions in New Jersey, and it's not treated as such. It's one of the most important functions because it is the first and only touch point that a resident has directly with state government. That is their impression on whether their state government is working. Most residents don't have a direct contact with the DEP or the DOE, but the motor vehicles, they do. So really making it easy and convenient for people is paramount. And then online transactions. I outlined in our plan how we would give discounts for people doing more of their simple transactions online to alleviate the pressure at the actual storefronts, or as I view them, kind of the brick and mortar MVC locations. So that's the broadly on the motor vehicle situation. I think we're going to open up for questions now.
All right. Well, the questions have been coming in fast and furiously. So I am going to call on Kevin Dyer. Kevin, you can unmute yourself.
Hello, you hear me?
Yep.
Okay.
Lisa, can we see Kevin? Is that possible?
Oh, yeah, okay.
Let's see. Can we see you, Kevin?
Can you guys hear me?
And I can pin you.
Oh, there we go.
All right, that's fine. We'll figure out this way, but the box goes.
All
I'll figure it out.
All right.
All right, appreciate it.
My question was regarding electrification. So
Yeah.
we talked a bit about the Raritan Valley line and how they have to get up dual modes, and I think electrification of some certain lines, including Montclair Boonton line, freeing up those last gaps where there is no electrification now, and they have to use up those dual modes for just small little spaces between the line. That could end up, helping out Raritan Valley line, and also has the added benefit of increasing train frequency, lowering emissions, and increasing acceleration of the trains as well, just being all around better improvement for our transit system. So would you support electrification of further lines across the New Jersey transit system?
I would. It's part of what we're looking around on sustainability is generally moving towards electrification where possible. I think New Jersey Transit has tended to take the cheaper approach where possible and not necessarily making the investments that are necessary for long-term, environmentally conscious, more efficient, just kind of checking the box. One of the things that we're trying to do here is say, here's a plan, we're really going to invest in this and do it properly. So I think the short answer from my standpoint is yes, it would be a priority. Shelley, I don't know if you have anything you want to add on that, being that it was specific to some of the suburban lines.
No, I think that's right. I think, you know, the more immediate one is this reallocation of dual locomotives in advance of electrification and gateway and so forth. And that really comes down to more operational challenges, I think, in terms of a reallocation of resources. But I think electrification across the board would be a worthy goal.
Okay, thank you, Kevin. Next, I'm going to call on LaTrenda. And I just want to remind folks, we've got too many people to do the raised hands. So if you can just put the question in the chat, that'll work better. And LaTrenda, you go right ahead.
Good evening, everyone. Mayor Fulop, it's a pleasure to see you again. Thank you so much for this worthy information this evening. A few years ago, we did a press release on the ANC bus company that really wanted to kind of dissolve the services of the 31 bus, and somehow they kind of kept it in motion, but with reduced hours. And I understand that the entire ANC bus company is supposed to be dissolved. It is a high concern of mine because of the residents from the West Side area who need to travel from West Side downtown, especially to Newport Mall. We're talking about the disabled, the elderly population, and then you have students who are attending school as well in these areas. What are the plans for the dissolve of this bus company? I'm hearing New Jersey Transit, whatever they want to do, they don't want to do it, they don't want to take over. So what are the plans?
Yeah, so yeah, it's something that's actually outlined, not specific to ANC, but it is outlined in the transportation plan from last week. You know, so let me specific on ANC. There was a meeting yesterday. Our infrastructure team was there. We continue to communicate with New Jersey Transit with regards to making sure that they pick up those lines and that they invest appropriately. But it speaks to a larger problem in New Jersey and how New Jersey Transit deals with private contractors for bus lines. And if you take a step back and you think about infrastructure around transportation in general, most of the time, it is a loss from a revenue standpoint. There shouldn't be the expectation that you're going to make money. So if you contract from a government standpoint, whose responsibility is mobility and understanding that it will not be a revenue break-even sort of situation, if you contract out with a private contractor whose focus is bottom line making money, there's a fundamental disconnect on what transportation should be and how it should be approached. So obviously, the ANC type of vendor, or in this situation, actually ANC, will curtail service into places that they don't feel like they're making money, and that is a problem. So we have outlined that we would gradually fade out all of the private vendors. I don't think it's in anybody's best interest to have that sort of model here in New Jersey Transit. It's a place that you could work with Ray and ATU on, and I think that doing an audit of some of these lines and looking at how they're approached today would benefit everybody. In Jersey City, you know, you certainly know that this is not the first time over the last couple of years that we've seen a private contractor abandon a line. Also, we've seen in New Jersey Transit that here in Jersey City that you've had residents over certain lines complaining about infrequency of service only for New Jersey Transit and the private vendor to say, yes, we are picking up people on those lines, only to later find out after the Attorney General pursued it that some of those reports were fraudulent and the residents were right. So it goes back to this disconnect around what transportation should be, and the private entity looking to maximize their dollars on transportation is not necessarily aligned with what transportation should be with regards to, or has been with regards to, government moving people around, giving them access, quality of life, economic access, and mobility overall. So the short answer is phasing out some of those private vendors. The near-term answer for you is continue to push New Jersey Transit to pick up those lines.
Thank you. Okay, next we have Louis. Louis has a whole bunch of questions, but I asked him to ask just one.
Louis, okay.
Hey,
Go
Mayor.
ahead, Louis.
Hi, I just wanted to ask if you could detail better how this will be funded, right? You mentioned in the PDF file CBT.
Yeah.
Obviously, we all feel, hey, everybody should pay their fair share especially when you're talking about a Fortune 500 corporation.
Yep.
How will that affect small, medium-sized businesses? How will that ripple down to taxpayers? I agree with what you said. You can't expect this to operate like a private business. However, you do want it to run efficiently. You do run it. You don't want waste, essentially. But how will that be funded?
Yeah. So the CBT is dedicated revenue source towards the $1 billion that is the current projected gap of New Jersey Transit. It's important to have a dedicated revenue stream, and the CBT is currently in place in New Jersey, and it sunsets, and the conversation statewide is whether Governor Murphy should allow it to sunset. And I think the responsible thing is no, being, like I said, it's been something that's been paid for by the largest corporation. The reason I think that the CBT is a natural fit is because it is something that's already accepted. It's not a new tax. It's normalized for them over the last 4, 5, 6 years since it's been in place. And you've seen the economic environment in New Jersey increase for these larger corporations. So it's something that they could certainly handle. With regards to operations beyond that, we dedicated in the plan the congestion pricing benefits towards the increases that we would need for PATH or the light rail service. So those dollars also are outlined as having a dedicated revenue stream in the plan. What I tried to do was not to take anything and not have a responsible way to pay for it. So the only things there that are not fully funded are small pilot programs like the microtransit system that I mentioned, as far as trying to connect transit deserts, et cetera. But everything else in there I outlined is funded. The expansion of the light rail in the areas that were outlined, I said we'd reallocate some of the dollars that were there for turnpike expansion, because again, it's a one-time revenue, one-time expense, capital dollars that could go towards light rail, which again is infrastructure improvement, but I think more important for betterment of residents. So the short answer is everything there has an actual path for paying for it.
Great, thank you. Next we have Travis. Okay,
Hey
go ahead,
there.
Travis.
Hi, thanks for doing this. My question was, as a frequent light rail user who also has a monthly NJT ticket, one of the benefits of that is, you have a monthly commuter rail pass, you get on the light rail, that's included, right? So it's nice to be able to have multiple modes. So in your proposal for PATH, are you thinking, maybe some sort of similar, arrangement for that to encourage more connections, modal, and avoiding everyone's favorite place, Penn Station?
I do. I think the core of the conversation is really about a more of a regional system here, where your ticket could interchange and give you access to more places than you have today, and more coordination and cooperation between the different transit systems in New York, in Long Island, in New Jersey, and whether that is by leveraging points of pain at the Port Authority to get New York's attention. We're increasing congestion pricing on our side to get their attention. The end result is that there needs to be a larger conversation around regional transportation. So as we integrate things into the transit system, New Jersey Transit, my goal would be to figure out how to make everything mesh together, because ultimately you want to land on a place that everybody's working cohesively together.
Great. I'm going to call on David Friedrich next.
Yeah, hi there. Thanks for having me. So I'm like a big advocate in like public transit, and like, well, I haven't actually done like any advocacy work, but it's a vision I really believe in very strongly. But like one thing I'm trying to, like, a vision that I would love to see like brought through to the state is like just filling in those transit deserts, like the northwest of New Jersey like barely has anything at all really. Like I'm like in what, north central New Jersey, somewhere around there, and like you see Sussex County, they don't have any rail lines, and that's something I think really should be fixed at some point.
Okay. David, point taken. We'll talk to the mayors that are involved, and I see you put into chat as well, and see how we could figure out how to encompass that and include it into what we're trying to do.
Yeah,
It's a
maybe
fair
something
point.
like restoring service on the Lackawanna cutoff, for example. That would at least get them something, even if it's not, even if it's not like immediately in their towns. It would at least be closer than like the extremities of the existing rail lines that we do have.
Fair. Okay.
Yeah.
It's a good point, David. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Lisa, any?
I'm muted and I'm talking to myself.
Okay.
Let me see who we've got next. I know there was a lot of talk about light rail. I think we've talked about that. Orlando, go ahead.
Good evening, Mayor Fulop. How are you?
Good. How are you, Orlando?
I'm doing well. So thanks for hosting this meeting also. So for us at NJ Transit, we're having an extremely difficult time hiring qualified maintenance workers, particularly because of the equipment that we're working on, the newer technology, and also electric buses going forward. You know, we're going to be having so many electric buses. What's your position regarding apprenticeships? Because we're having a difficult time with New Jersey Transit to form apprenticeship programs so that we can bring in these qualified maintenance workers.
Why, Orlando, why have they pushed back on apprenticeships? It seems like something that the governor would be supportive of.
It seems like because when you deal with apprenticeship programs, you know, you have a management union relationship, and it's more like a partnership. But it seems like, you know, trying to get them to go along with that seems a little difficult. So, you know, hopefully when you win, we can move forward with that. But we have an extreme difficulty forming these partnerships for apprenticeship programs.
Yeah,
right?
I'd love to learn more. I mean, look, we have 6+ unions here in Jersey City that I negotiate with. I think they would say that, you know, I'm fair. Those contracts get resolved. They may not love me. They certainly don't hate me. They would say that we treat them fairly and respectfully. We've raised the minimum wage for starting employees here to $20 in Jersey City. We're at the forefront of the state for the conversation, $15. We've done audits around all of our compensation here in Jersey City because it was just antiquated and we need to adjust it to get better talent. And I think that's kind of a realistic position to have. If you could send me more stuff around the apprenticeship opportunities, that would be really helpful. I'll shoot you over my email afterwards. Okay.
Thank you.
And oops, sorry. I think we've got time for one more. James, I'm going to unmute you. Go ahead, James.
Hey, good evening, Mayor. Thanks for doing this. You know, transportation infrastructure plan. It brings a vision to NJ Transit that I think a lot of folks just haven't seen. But like a lot of ambitious plans, it's already attracted naysayers, you know, and I guess like you've talked about this a little bit, but like, what do you say to the naysayers who don't have an alternative for public transit?
So first let me say, before we start this is the last question, and then we're going to answer people, I guess, via email over the next week or so, but because there's a lot of questions. But I do want to say, if you're interested in getting involved with the campaign, you go to stephenfulop.com before people sign off here. I do want to put that plug in, click the volunteer, and then there's a whole system that we go through to keep people connected on the policy front, on the initiative front, on the volunteer front, on the information front. So I'm just putting that out there for anybody that's interested. There's a lot more of these white papers and policy initiatives in queue, as I touched on initially. And we'd love to have people involved. It's one person at a time that you build a successful campaign. With regards to the naysayers, look, I'm not surprised, but for some of them that were criticizing it, knowing that they are the ones criticizing it, I viewed it as I'm clearly on the right path. They put misinformation out that it was a double taxation, not true. That something was inviable, not true. And from my standpoint, you, like I said earlier, you treat residents and voters like adults that they are. You share with them comprehensive details that they can digest. And I think that the voters and residents will reward us for that ultimately in June of 2025. So, I think at some point, when you have more candidates in the field, the expectation is going to be, what is your solution? Not just saying, hey, I don't like that. And I think that, voters in New Jersey are expecting details. And the fact that we're pushing it aggressively is going to raise the bar, and it's going to benefit everybody here and in the state of New Jersey, because it's going to create a dynamic for just more comprehensive conversation around this. But let me just say again, look, we fluctuated around 300 people plus in and out tonight at 7 o'clock on a Thursday. And I just want to say thank you for taking time. I am accessible. My email address is on the website, info@stephenfulop.com will come to me, and I will respond. So I appreciate all of you taking the time and caring enough about the future of the state to participate, and look forward to working with you over the next 2 years just to build a better New Jersey. So thank you all for participating.